Hey YouTubers, Roland Martin here, and I'm about to have a celebration. I'm about to celebrate the 150,000 subscribers. Look at that, 149,800 subscribers. And as my YouTube channel is being so successful, and my talk today is how I can help you become successful in your YouTube ventures. There's a couple things that I want to point out, the keys to my success that could possibly be the keys to your success as well. Let's get started. You know, one of my big keys to success has been my credibility. Now, because what I do and what my strength in YouTubing is how-to videos. That's the number one thing that I do for YouTubing, and let me tell you how I got the credibility to impress upon my viewers that, hey, I'm an expert. I know what I'm talking about. I can tell you how to rig a plastic worm. I can tell you what kind of rods to use. I can tell you the right lures for the day. I can tell you the patterns that I suggest that will probably work the best. How do you get that credibility? How do you become an expert in the field to be able to tell people so that they'll listen to you? Well, one way, and how I did it and how I started, was I used the tournament success that I had in the early 70s, 80s, and 90s, where I won Angler of the Year titles, where I won multi-national titles, and I set a lot of records. Okay, well, I did that for the springboard of opportunity that it offered me. In other words, Ray Scott was the president of B.A.S.S Angler Sportsman Society, and he told me, he said, Roland, you can take your tournament success and parlay it into a big successful business, and that's what I wanted to do. I said, well, Ray, what do you suggest? Well, I've been doing a lot of things like television in the first place. I've been working with Glenn Lau back in the early 70s and the Fisherman series in Homer Circle. I've been working with Frank White out of North Carolina, doing film work for that, so all back in the 60s. So I knew a little bit about photography. Plus, I was taking big, I don't have any of the pictures right now, but I was doing still photography with my Hasselblad, my good Nikon cameras, and I had pictures for cover shots for Sports of Field and Stream and Outdoor Life, and I really got into photography a lot. Then I started publishing things. I was a contributing editor to the Fishing Facts magazine, contributing editor to Bassmaster magazine. Before I'd ever gotten into tournament fishing at all, and before I did anything, I was a guide on Santee Cooper Reservoir. And I decided to publish a map. This was back in the late 60s. And it was Roland Martin's fishing guide map for Santee Cooper. And in this map, I explained what a pattern is. I gave it the definition. I talked about the cypress tree patterns, the riprap patterns, the spawning patterns. I would identify little places on the lake. And as you look at this map, I'd have it shaded for a spawning area. I'd have it shaded for a good cypress area. I'd have it shaded for this, that, and the other area. So I identified this pattern places as well. Anyway, that was my first venture into the sport. Well, then Ray Scott came along. And I'll tell you what Ray Scott did. Ray Scott was such an inspiration. He said, okay, Roland, you need to fish some of these tournaments. I didn't want to fish tournaments. I was a guide at Santee, and I was just happy just catching big old bass when I could. So everybody was taking notice, and so there's this big show called the American Fishing Tackle Manufacturers Association, called AFTMA. It's the trade show for all of the fishing tackle industry. And so I was working for Lowrance Electronics at the time, and Lowrance says, we have a big booth at the AFTMA show. We'll go to Chicago at the McCormick Center, and you and tell people how to read the depth finder. It was my job at Lowrance. I was kind of information guy, and maybe look into getting some television sponsors. So I went there, and I walk up to a sponsor, somebody like Forrest Wood with say Ranger Boats, and say, hey, Mr. Wood, listen. I've won all these tournaments. I really know what I'm talking about. I want to start a show. Well, the first idea about a television show I had was Fishing Florida with Roland Martin. And so I told Forrest Wood about that. I said, Forrest, what do you think about it? Fishing Florida with Roland Martin. And Forrest said, it was a good advice. He said, Roland, he said, wait a minute. Don't do that. Don't have a Florida show. Have it a national show. Have it all around the country, and have it say like Fishing with Roland Martin, and just go all over the place. I said, well, that's a pretty good idea. So that was one really good lesson I learned from Forrest Wood. So I had some good help along the way. I had Forrest Wood, and I had guys like Ray Scott really pushing me along. And then, of course, I had all the good fishermen that were around. Bill Dance was my buddy then, and the Murrays and all these other guys, Ricky Clun, and we were all kind of pooling information when we can, working together as far as helping each other out. So anyway, right off the bat, I get a television show. I lost a little bit of money the first year. Couldn't make it work too good. So what I decided to do was, hey, let me tell you what I did. I'd gotten some insurance money from my parents had passed away, so I had some insurance money. And I had about $30,000 or $40,000 I'd won in some tournament competition in the early 70s. So I took this $50,000 and I put it in television. Well, I lost it. I lost most of it. The only thing that kept me going was I had a pretty good job at Lowrance Electronics, and I won some more tournaments, so it kind of kept me going. Well, I gave it a couple more years, and finally I just said, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna get out of television. I'll just write some articles and I'll write books and stuff like that. So finally I said, no, I'll give it one more year. Well, I turned the corner and I got enough advertisers now. I started working with Bill Dance out of actually Little Rock, Arkansas. We had a deal working with Telesports together. And I started working, and then right after that I worked with Orlando Wilson in television, and we worked out of Atlanta. And I got on the B.A.S.S broadcast, the national, the national network, and that was really what, and TNN, I'm sorry, the national network, and TNN was a big giant deal, and they gave me a big contract a year, and I was really winning a lot of money. And this is all in the '90s, and television was on top of the world. We were making lots of money, Dance and I, and Houston, and we were all just doing great in television. Then all of a sudden, boom, we fell like a rock. What happened? Hey, cable came along. Well, not cable, but the satellites. And oh man, all of a sudden television, instead of being the big pie that it was in the 90s where you had 10 or 15 slices for that network, for that one area, say like Minneapolis. I had a lot of advertisers in Minneapolis. With Rappler that I worked with Stearns Life Vest that I worked with Minn Kota that I worked with. So they wanted me to come up to Minneapolis and buy the airtime, number one, and also fish around the Minneapolis area, and I did that. Okay, that was all good. But when cable came along and all this big pie became hundreds and hundreds of channels, now my presence in the, say, Minneapolis market was only 1/10 of what it had been. So now we're losing audience levels in the big metropolitan city. We're gaining more coverage because the whole country's got thousands and thousands of outlets now, so that's kind of a plus, but it's not as good as it was. The whole point is, starting in the 90s, late 90s, our revenues started going downhill. There wasn't social media. And I'm getting to this, I'm getting to YouTube, and I'm explaining this. But YouTubing was not even on the planet then. Nobody even understood it. All we know, we were losing money in television. Not losing money, but not losing some contract money. So anyway, finally, we're rocking along, and finally, about 4 years ago, television's really kind of taken a back seat, and our contracts had been cut. Finally, B.A.S.S Pro Shop came to me and said, we're going to have to start cutting contracts. We're not getting enough cost per thousand. We're not getting millions of viewers like we used to on television. What are we going to do about it, Roland? Well, not only was I having problems, but Dance was having problems, and Houston we were all having problems. And so we were all getting smaller and smaller contracts from everybody. Well, then my son had hit on this YouTube deal. He started working with the Guggen boys, Lunker TV guy, Rob Turkland. He started working with the Lake Fork guys and all the other guys that are so good. And he all of a sudden, about 10 years ago, he started getting this YouTube thing going. He said, Dad, that's the wave of the future. That's where it's all going to be. Television is going to go away, or at least go downhill. Well, I didn't listen much until 5 years ago. A big thing happened 5 years ago. B.A.S.S Pro Shop came to me and said, we're going to have to cut your contract. Then Favorite Rods came to me and say, hey, we're paying too much for this. You're not getting enough coverage. Television's kind of going downhill. And then Spikey Corporation said the same thing, and all kind of people, Spro and everybody else. They said, hey, television's kind of going downhill. What are we going to do about it? We need to get a social media presence. So I go to my son Scott, and I said, hey, Scott, what are we going to do? I got man, I tell you, all these sponsors are going to cut my contracts and everything else. He said, Dad, we can start a YouTube channel. You got plenty of ability. You've made television shows for all these years. You know how to talk to the audience. You know how to be credible. You can do a how-to format. That's your best suit. So I said, sure enough, I can handle how-to. I can tell them every little thing about how to fish a Senko, every little thing about a crankbait, every little thing about the rods and reels. That's how-to. I got the credibility. I got the knowledge. I got the expertise. Okay, that's my niche. Okay. I said, Scott, how often should I publish? YouTube. I mean, this is like a big deal. What, like once a month? He said, no. Once or twice a week. I said, what? Making films and once or twice a week? Yep, you got to do that. So anyway, I met up with Rob Turkla about the same time with Lunkers TV. Rob said when he first got started about 10, 12 years ago, he was posting 3 and 4 times a week. Just lots of saturation, lots of coverage. He said, that's what you need to do, Roland. So sure enough, I said, well, okay, I'm going to try it. So I started posting 3 times a week. Well, that first year, say 3.5 years ago, at the end of the year, I went to Winston Tucker. He's big in the social media. He'd hired those Guggen guys, and he really knew a lot about it. He said, Roland, you're doing pretty good. You get about 25,000 subscribers. You're kind of getting there. I said, yeah, but it's slow moving. It's just hard to get anywhere. It's hard to get the viewers, and it's just really tough. Yeah, but you're doing good. He gave me a lot of encouragement. Sure enough, I kept working with it, and by the end of that year, I was up almost 50,000. That was 2.5 years ago. See, well, finally, last year, boy, the thing, I'm really rocking and rolling. I got 60, 80,000. All of a sudden, last year, I get to 100,000 viewers. And man, I get a trophy. The YouTube people are congratulating me. All my sponsors saying 100,000, that's big time. There's only a half a dozen fishermen like myself and Scott and Brian Latimer and Jacob Wheeler and Mike Iaconelli. That's like the only 100,000 viewers there are. I mean, there's like 2 dozen or 3 dozen other people out there that are doing YouTube, so lots of them, but are way less than 100,000 viewers. Let me tell you, it's 100,000 is a big deal. So here I am in the $100,000 level a year ago. Well, not quite a year ago. Well, now I'm posting 3 times a week. I'm really getting after that how-to format. I mean, I really got it rock solid. I'm telling you all about patterns. I'm telling you all about all the things like that. And I got 150,000 viewers. Well, not viewers, 150,000 subscribers. Some of my videos I've had almost 2 million views on. One of them was a real elementary one where I'm out there wading in the water, and my whole title was How to Fish from the Bank with 2 lures, a frog and a worm, frog and a Senko. And I've had some other great big ones, about 1 million, and that's stuff like how to fish Senkos and stuff. Just the how-to format was my strength. So what I'm recommending to you, if you want to get started in your own YouTube channel and want to be successful, I recommend how-to formats. But to do that, you have to establish your credibility. You have to do something like fish tournaments and win tournaments to get the notoriety and get the ability to say, hey, I'm an expert because I've won all this. I know what I'm talking about, so you can listen and believe what I say. Well, anyway, that's been my success. The pattern formats, the YouTube format, getting out there and posting up to 3 times a week, which is a lot of heavy work. In fact, I'm working harder now than I think I've ever worked in television. And that's the key to my success. And so maybe I can pass on that information, and maybe you can get a good hard start with your YouTube adventures and your YouTube challenge and do as well as I have. I hope so. And we'll see you again soon. And hey, thanks for watching.